Well, hello and welcome to today's presentation, Jump into the Cloud. I'm very personally excited to present this to you with Kurt Rayner, our VP of Research and Development, who spent the last couple of years building out the Alpha Cloud environment. For those of you, most of you actually know what the cloud is about, or you probably wouldn't be here today, but it's a new way of deploying your applications, giving you better scalability, failover, versioning, testing, and quite a few more advantages. But to get started, we actually wanted to give a demonstration of the cloud. And to do that, we've actually made a short little video for you that we would like to show you.
Hi, I'm Kurt Rayner, Vice President of Research and Development at Alpha Software, and in the next few minutes we're going to see how easy it can be to publish your web project developed with Alpha Anywhere to Alpha Cloud. We're going to start with a web project called Hello World. Seems fitting. You'll see that this project has a single A5W page, and sure enough, it's a Hello World web page. And if we look at it in live preview, we see Hello World. We'd like to take this web project and publish and then deploy it to Alpha Cloud. That will require two steps. First, we're going to create a publish profile, and then we're going to use that profile to publish to Alpha Cloud and deploy the application at the same time. So we go to the Web Control Panel and select Alpha Cloud Publish. Now we haven't published before, so we need to create a new profile. So we'll click on Create New Profile and then click on OK. If we had other profiles, we would see them listed to the left, but we don't. So we'll create a profile called Alpha Cloud. And you've noticed that the web project name becomes the application name for Alpha Cloud. You can change it if you want to, but this one works. You have the ability to tell Alpha Cloud how you would like to handle publishing your users and roles. We have a simple application without security here, so that's not an issue. And we're going to just set logging to basic. There are other options. We also, you notice, can select the particular build of Alpha Anywhere, and the currently released build is 4582. So we'll just stick with that. We also see that the URL that Alpha Cloud is going to create for us is already shown right here, and we'll come back to that after we publish. So we'll click OK, and it's a little concerned that we're working with an older build here. That's not a problem. So we've got a published profile now. Now we'd like to actually publish our web project to Alpha Cloud. This is similar to the publish process that goes on for publishing to the Classic server or to IIS. The difference is that we're actually moving our web project out to Alpha Cloud, creating a new version, and you notice this is version number 1. It's never been published before. And then we can see what the cloud is doing in response to our publication to deploy the application to the website we requested. At this point, the application has been published, and from the publish success dialog that we're looking at, we can just go ahead and click on the link and be taken to a web browser that will show us, sure enough, our Hello World application has been published to Alpha Cloud.
We're going to spend a few minutes this afternoon looking at some of the key issues with deploying, and I shouldn't say issues because Alpha Cloud makes it fairly easy to do it, but I think the first thing that we want to do is talk about what Alpha Cloud is, a little bit of what it isn't. I mean, first and foremost, Alpha Cloud is website deployment. We'll explain what that means. If you've seen the video, you have a sense of that. Platform as a service versus infrastructure as a service seems to confuse a few folks, so I want to talk about that. And then I want to make it clear that Alpha Cloud is a production environment. So let's start with the concept of website deployment. The idea is that once you've developed an application with Alpha Anywhere, you need a place to actually run that, and that, of course, is going to be a website. So Alpha Cloud's job is to get the assets that you've developed from your desktop to a production running website. We do not include the database in that, so you will need to bring your own database. There are a lot of options. We're pretty happy with Amazon RDS. That service is fairly easy to use, and in fact we have some documentation on it. Azure SQL works as well. You may decide that you want to put your database or keep your database behind your own firewall. Perfectly acceptable. You might want to use a different cloud provider for hosting your database. That is up to you, and we certainly want to support it. But one very important thing to remember is that you want to keep your database connections secure. You may be used to running a website behind your firewall and not have secured the connection to the database. So you need to understand what's required in terms of installing certificates and creating a secure connection from Alpha Anywhere. And as a side note, Amazon RDS makes it very easy to secure that connection, and Alpha Anywhere works with literally just setting a checkbox on the connection string. You don't have to install the certificate or anything. The second point to be made is that Alpha Cloud is a platform as a service. I get a lot of people that say, well, what size machine do I need to choose? Or how do I need to configure my load balancers? You don't have to do any of that. With Alpha Cloud, we're providing that entire platform. We are, however, built on a very robust infrastructure, which is the Amazon Web Service infrastructure. So you get that infrastructure rolled into Alpha Cloud, and I'll show a diagram about that in a minute. The second thing you're getting is that you're getting Alpha Anywhere Application Server for IIS. And any of you who've set up and configured IIS know that that's not particularly a trivial task. That's done for you automatically. You don't have to go near it. And finally, the point to be made is that you focus on deploying your website, not configuring systems and software. So when we talk about Alpha Cloud, the takeaway there is it is a platform as a service. It is an environment where you can deploy your web project without having to know the details. In point of fact, there are quite a few details, and this diagram gives you a sense of all of the moving parts that are part of Alpha Cloud. You have direct connectivity from the development environment. There's actually a web page that you can go to manage your subscription and look at usage. You notice that the application database is outside of that blue box. That's something that you have control over. However, everything else about the deployment is handled by Alpha Cloud. The storage of your application, it has its own management database. Your users and groups, your security information is published to Alpha Cloud, and we will manage that for you in its own secure database. And we will keep track of, the definitional changes that you make along the way. Amazon does its part, Microsoft IIS does its part, and Alpha Cloud is really about making that complexity very approachable. In terms of, and this is more for you folks who have actually worked with Amazon AWS, this diagram may look fairly familiar. We really do create auto-scaling groups on Amazon. In those auto-scaling groups, we run servers, and those servers scale. The point to be made is that you're getting all of this just by deploying your website. You don't have to make choices about whether you get load balancing. That's built in. You don't have to make choices about, do I scale or not? That's built in. You don't have to worry about what if my server goes down or what if my process goes down. That's taken care of by Alpha Cloud. So I think the point that comes out of that, and something that's really important to understand, is this is a production environment. This is not a hobby environment, and this is certainly not something where you get only part of the solution. You get load balancing, You get redundancy. In public tenancy, for example, we always run at least 2 servers. So if one of those servers should fail for some reason or other, there's always another server running. And because of the way Amazon works, as soon as that's detected that there's one missing, it will start another one. If you have a problem, you may not even know it. In terms of scaling, you don't have to configure the capacity for your website, because when the load is increased on one of those servers, Amazon auto-scaling will automatically add another server. And within reason, we will scale. Typically, we set a limit of 5 servers, but that's something that we'll be tuning over time. But we'll scale up until the point where capacity is sufficient to run your website. So you should not have any issues there. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what Alpha Cloud is. You saw what it takes to deploy to it. There's a lot that we really don't have time to go into here, and I think you're going to see that, you know, the dialogues, the user interface in Alpha Anywhere are really sufficient to give you a picture of what's going on when you're running your website. Okay, Dave, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kurt. So one thing I'd like to point out, let me just go ahead and start sharing my screen, is that we do have quite a lot of documentation here. Let me go ahead and make myself the presenter. And let me share this window. And Kurt, if you could confirm that you see my web browser, that would be great.
I see your web browser.
Fantastic. So this is documentation.alphasoftware.com. For those of you who haven't visited here, you really should visit here. It's really a tremendous resource, and I really can't say enough about the new documentation system. In fact, the documentation system is monitored by a team of people, so that if you ever have any difficulty understanding an article or you can't find something that you want, there is a link on most of the pages. Let me go ahead and show you one of those. Oops, let's go to documentation.alphasoftware.com, and right here, report an issue with this page. Click that really for anything, and we will take a look at it, we'll get back to you, and we'll improve the documentation as a result of that. So today, though, I just want to go over the documentation that's available for cloud. So I'm just going to type in cloud here. And right now, cloud is now incorrectly labeled under beta because it's no longer a beta thing, and it's now ready for production and out. But let me just go ahead and here click on Alpha Cloud. Whoops. Back up. I think it was this one. I'll be right there. Here we go. Grab that. Grab this, and we will sort this out in the documentation, so it'll be a little bit easier to find next time. But let me go back over here. Oh, that's odd. So anyway, this is the Alpha Anywhere Developer's Guide for, and in particular, there is an article about setting up on Amazon an Amazon RDS, Relational Database Services instance for MariaDB and connecting it to the Alpha Cloud. It's actually quite straightforward. I've run through this myself, and it works really great. So if you're interested, you become if you do start using the cloud, I do suggest you take a look here through the documentation. So that's all really I had to add, but we are ready for your questions. So if you've got questions, please go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll give you a few minutes here. Okay, so first question, this is a great one. I'm used to using SQL tables for Alpha security. I understand that the Alpha Cloud manages the security by keeping the users and tables in the Alpha Cloud, even though my database might be behind its own firewall. How is this accomplished? Can you talk a little bit about the just Alpha security as it relates to Alpha Cloud?
That's a good question, Dave. We're running on IIS, and IIS is a different model than you've seen with the Alpha Anywhere application server historically. IIS uses membership providers. Those providers work with specific databases. And on Alpha Cloud, we happen to use the MySQL membership provider, and we maintain a separate MySQL database for every group of users and roles. So what happens when you publish from your web project to Alpha Cloud is you actually move your users, roles, and your relationships between users and roles from your web project up to the Alpha Cloud environment. And when your project is deployed, we move those users and groups into a database specific to your security application. And just to be precise, typically we'll create a security application for each deployment, but you don't have to do that. You can have one security application shared across deployments. So that's absolutely feasible. There's no special sauce here. We're actually an IIS user, which means we install the membership provider for MySQL. That membership provider has credentials that point it directly to your database in Amazon RDS. Again, it's a MySQL database, and your users and roles are maintained there.
Terrific. And up on my screen, you'll see actually in the documentation under the Alpha Cloud, managing security applications will actually give you a very good overview, complete with screenshots and instructions on how all of this works. Here's a question. Is MariaDB the preferred database? And if it is, then and why would that be?
Well, I hate to pick favorites, but I can tell you that I've had some really good experience working with the MariaDB client. In fact, if you're doing a secure connection, there are times when the MySQL client is not going to work even with MySQL. MariaDB will work with both MySQL
Right.
and SQL and MariaDB's databases. So I think we had done a lot of work with MySQL in the past. I think going forward, I would probably prefer to use MariaDB simply because of the consistency on the client side. The other factor to keep in mind, and I didn't talk about it today, is we've begun to look at Aurora. Aurora is Amazon's scalable SQL database, and I think that's worth looking at. We can support Aurora as well as Redshift on Alpha Cloud applications.
Excellent. Here's a question about disaster recovery, and I guess you'd have to look at that in two pieces. One would be disaster recovery as it relates to data, which we don't really touch, but because the database is managed by you using, say, Alpha Amazon AWS or something like that. But as it comes to the application, can you talk about, what happens if something happens? I don't know.
Nothing can go wrong, Dave. We know that.
Nothing can go wrong. Excellent. All right.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about the way Amazon implements scaling groups is that it's uncommon for that disaster to happen, but it can. We run an auto-scaling group, which we refer to as a server group, in a minimum of 2 different data centers. So the Amazon Load Balancer, which is a service, by the way, not an instance, so it's not specific to a data center. That load balancer will detect a failure in a data center and will load balance to a data center that is available. Right now we start with 2 instances, so we can only be in 2 data centers, but the first scaling operation that happens will actually create a 3rd instance in a 3rd data center if that region has 3 data centers. So if something does happen to a data center, you're covered. If for some reason every instance in the server group were to fail, what would happen is Amazon would restart those servers, and the application, the assets that you create in your web project, they're stored in S3, which has a phenomenally high availability. In fact, they guarantee that anything stored in S3, which is Amazon's simple storage service, those objects are stored in a minimum of 3 places. So we're pretty much guaranteed that they are going to be there. In fact, the statistical number is quite high. What happens when a server gets restarted is a server literally gets created from definitional files that we again store on S3, and from your application files. So we rebuild those servers automatically. I sometimes just I suppose it's a little bit sadistic, but I like to go in and just take a server offline, terminate it, and watch what Amazon autoscaling will do. And it's really exciting to watch that. Once it realizes something has gone wrong, it knows it needs to start a server. It starts the server up. It goes and asks what information it needs from us, and then it will load your applications, load Alpha Anywhere for IIS onto that machine, and you're back in business. So disaster recovery for the application is really built right in. And as Dave mentioned, the database is something that you're managing right now. And again, I should talk to services like Amazon, AWS, and Azure, and even Google Cloud. These services back up your database automatically, and they will recover it. You can do point-in-time recovery and a number of great things that are a little more difficult if you're managing the database yourself.
So no one in your IT department has to wake up at midnight because a hard drive has failed. Is one of the,
you might even decide you don't need
there.
that IT department.
You may not even need that. Oh boy. Someone here asked if this works with Active Directory, the security system. Does that tie together with the cloud?
Right now, we do not support Active Directory on Alpha Cloud.
Okay.
That is on the backlog, and one of the things that we're looking at is those cases where people may say, you know, that's great, but I want to use my own membership provider, or I want a different membership provider. So we're looking at implementing support for choosing a membership provider. Probably SQL Server, MySQL, and Active Directory would be the three top ones we'd look at.
Excellent. Another question is, do you, and I suppose do you as the partner who's a subscriber to the Alpha Cloud, have any control over the AWS availability zones? Can I choose where I want to put my applications?
You don't have control over the availability zones, and I think one of the things to keep in mind with a platform like this is that you are working at you're working at a fairly abstract level, so you're giving up some control to have things managed automatically. That said, availability zones are really, they're not even visible to us for the most part, other than we see a name. There's zone A, B, C, and D. And what you may not know is that availability zones, which are data centers, are different for each account. So it's really just a way of saying, look, there are multiple data centers. Amazon won't tell us where they are, but they form what's called a region. Now, if the question is, can I select what region I run in? And I suspect that may be where it's coming from. You can, in fact, choose a region. Right now we are only supporting 2, and we're going to be careful about how we roll them out because there's a cost for each region. But we have the ability to run on any region that Amazon supports, and there are quite a few of them. They keep adding them around the world. We will be opening up the ones we can. China is kind of off limits, and the government region is obviously limited access. But there's nothing in Alpha Cloud that limits the regions that we can support.
Great, thank you. We have at least a handful of people asking questions about the inevitable costs. How much does it cost? And while our sales department can give you exact figures for your particular situation, just send an email to sales@alphasoftware.com and say I'm interested in cloud pricing. Can you just talk in general? I mean, I think sometimes people have come to the cloud thinking, oh, well, maybe this should be compared to like a HostGator or maybe a GoDaddy, virtual private server account. But that's probably the wrong way of looking at it. Would you mind speaking a little bit about that in terms of the difference?
That's a good way to put it, Dave. I think there's the point of Alpha Cloud is to get the deployment of a web project to a production website robust, easy, consistent, and very fault tolerant. I think some of the concern about disaster recovery, you literally do not have to worry about that. I mean, I think nothing is without problems. But Amazon is very reliable. We can't be more reliable than the way they are. I wish we could. But what you're getting with Alpha Cloud is knowing that you don't have to manage your own servers, you don't have to install updates, you don't have to install Alpha Anywhere or IIS. When your web project needs to be redeployed or republished, You saw in the video, it's a very simple process, and even if you should make a mistake, and I'm a programmer who has to admit that I make mistakes, you may want to roll back to a prior version of your application, and that is literally a matter of selecting and the option of redeploying and picking the version number that you want. So we keep all of the prior versions of your application out there for you. The value that you're getting is not something that you're going to find in these cheaper hosting providers. If you really do want to roll up your sleeves and play with IIS and tune it, and you need, or you need the control, then Alpha Cloud is probably not the fit for you. But I think in most cases, we've talked to a number of people who are excited about going to Alpha Cloud, and they want Alpha Cloud just for those reasons: the ease of publication and deployment, the robustness of the environment, and the fact that they really don't have to worry about what data center or what machine size. We do bill. We're putting subscription plans together, but we're tracking based on usage. So if you've got a fairly, light-duty website, you're not going to pay as much as someone who is running a public-facing website. However, as you need to grow, you're not going to have to go back and reconfigure your environment. It will scale for you. You will not have to go back and pick what server you need to add.
That is fantastic. Let me see. So another person asked, can you use your own domain name, or is it going to end in alphasoftware.com or something like that?
You can absolutely use your own domain name. When you create a website, you initially will see that there's a URL that begins with kind of a contraction of your subscription name and a dash and then the website, followed by cloud.alphasoftware.com. We will always bind that URL. However, if you create what's called a CNAME record on your own domain and point to that URL, you can then tell us that you've done it, and we'll add that host to the bindings on IIS. And you will want to install a certificate for that URL, for that CNAME that you've created, and we'll install that on IIS for you as well. So your website will respond to either of those URLs, and ultimately we will not give you the ability to use just HTTP. We want secure websites. So the short answer is yes, and you can do it.
Excellent. So again, for exact pricing or pricing, just send an email to sales@alphasoftware.com. They'd be happy to speak to your particular case and tell you about what it's going to run. So anyway, I would like to thank you very much, Kurt, for presenting today. I hope we've answered folks' technical questions about Alpha Cloud and what's included and how it all works and how easy it is to publish. If you have any further questions, go ahead and send an email to guides, GUIDES, @alphasoftware.com. Thanks again for attending, and we hope to see you at a future webinar. Take care, and goodbye.